Commander Cale Rivers hadn't even made it 20 minutes on the surface of Tharnis VI before things went sideways. The planet was mostly jungle, humid enough to soak through 3 layers of the breathable composite fabric built into his uniform, and thick with vines that seemed to grow right in front of you. The path was non-existent, hacked away by the scout teams only 12 hours earlier. He'd led dozens of expeditions like this before, but something about Tharnis VI made his skin itch. "Watch your step, Commander," said Dralin, the Tharnian liaison assigned to accompany the Earth delegation. Tall, soft-skinned in a translucent blue way, and always blinking far too slowly, Dralin had insisted on walking at the front. His long limbs moved as if underwater. "I'll be fine," Cale muttered, brushing aside a broad leaf and stepping over a thick root. Then came the snap. Not the root, his leg. Sharp, sudden, and unmistakable. Cale's boot caught under a hidden vine, and the momentum carried his weight forward, twisting his lower leg unnaturally. There was a crack that echoed louder in his head than in the jungle. Pain exploded up from his shin, and he hit the ground hard, face first into the moss. "Commander Rivers!" Dralin's voice went high and shrill, and then there were hands, many more than 2, Cale thought, dimly grabbing at his arms, rolling him over. He clenched his jaw and tried to sit up. The pain in his leg flared again and took his breath away. "Stop moving," Dralin said. "Your limit is destroyed. The internal structure has collapsed." "It's probably broken," Cale grunted. "Just the lower leg." "Tibia or fibula, maybe both. Hurts like hell." Dralin was already pulling out a comm device, tapping it with trembling fingers. "Emergency. I require immediate evac. The human, he is terminal." Cale blinked. "What?" "Your limb is structurally destabilized. The damage is irreversible. Your body cannot contain the trauma. This is a catastrophic event." "Hold on," Cale said, propping himself up on his elbows. "It's a broken leg. You don't die from that. Not unless you're trapped or bleeding out." Dralin stared at him, large eyes wide. "You are not bleeding externally." "But the bone, it is not in its natural position." "Yeah," Cale said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "That's what broken means." Another Tharnian arrived, a medic, judging by the silver band across his chest. He knelt beside Cale and began scanning with a device that looked like a tuning fork welded to a spoon. "Fracture confirmed," the medic said. "Tibiofibular dissociation. Internal destabilization. Prognosis, irreversible." Cale tried not to laugh. It hurt too much. "Guys, I need a splint, a stretcher, ice if you've got it. I'll need imaging when we get back, X-ray or MRI. Then, probably a cast for 6 weeks. 8, maybe." The Tharnians exchanged a glance. Dralin's long fingers twitched. "You intend to survive?" "I've done it before," Cale said. "Snapped my arm falling off a bike when I was 13. This hurts more, but it's not the end of the world." The medic looked ill. "You have survived this before?" "Yeah. Humans break bones all the time. We've got a whole medical branch just for that." "You are certain your internal structure can regenerate from this failure?" "With some help. Medical treatment. Time. But yeah." The medic stood, stunned. "I must report this to Central. This alters our understanding of your species significantly." Dralin was still crouched beside him, looking at Cale like he was a ghost. "You should not be conscious." "I've had worse," Cale mumbled, and then passed out. When he woke, he was in the Tharnian base camp infirmary. The ceiling was a soft, bioluminescent blue, and the air smelled like clean water. His leg was elevated and wrapped in a stiff composite brace. He blinked at the figure beside him. It was Dralin, holding a data pad and staring at him with raw fascination. "You survived the night," Dralin said. Cale shifted and winced. "Yeah, but it wasn't comfortable. We ran another scan. Your bones are attempting to repair themselves. Your cells did not abandon the structure. They wouldn't. That's not how it works. Human bones heal, but they need to be set right or it'll heal wrong." Dralin hesitated. "This setting? You mean aligning the structure manually?" "Yeah," Cale said. "That's what I was going to do before I passed out. Snap it back in place. Hurts like hell, but it's better than letting it heal crooked." "You were going to induce further trauma?" "Not trauma. Correction. It's standard." The Tharnian medic from earlier appeared in the doorway, holding a new scan. "His fibula is angled improperly. The tibia is partially displaced. He will lose function if it is not corrected." Cale sat up slowly. "Then we need to reset it. Now." Dralin took a step back. "That is beyond our capabilities." We do not manipulate internal structures manually. I'll do it myself, Cale said, gritting his teeth. But I'll need someone to hold me still. You cannot be serious. Cale grabbed the edge of the cot. You want to see how humans handle this? Watch. The medic reluctantly handed him a clean cloth and a stabilizing brace. Cale placed the cloth between his teeth, took a deep breath, and reached for his leg. Dralin flinched. No, surely there is a method. There was a sharp pop as Cale yanked his foot, aligning the bones with a practiced motion. A muffled scream cut through the room. His vision went white for a second, but when he came to, the pain was duller, more centralized. He spat out the cloth. Okay, that's better. The medic was frozen. Dralin looked faint. You just realigned your damaged structure. With your own hands. Yeah, Cale said, slumping back. Now give me that skin again and make sure it's lined up right. The medic obeyed in silence. A few moments later, he returned. Alignment is acceptable. Still damaged, but no longer catastrophic. Dralin sat heavily beside the cot. I must reevaluate everything I know about your kind. Cale closed his eyes. We're not indestructible, Dralin. But we don't quit easy. Over the next few days, Cale remained in the infirmary. The Tharnians didn't have plaster, but they adapted quickly, rigging a support brace that kept his leg immobilized. The pain was manageable with their analgesics, though he insisted on monitoring his vitals himself, wary of side effects. You are healing, the medic said on the 5th day. Your bone density is returning. It'll take weeks, Cale said. I'll be on crutches, then a cane. Full recovery in maybe 2-3 months. Dralin was there every day, taking notes, asking questions. Why do you endure this? He asked one morning. Cale was adjusting his brace. What do you mean? The pain. The effort. Why not remove the damaged limb and replace it with synthetic tissue? Because it's not necessary. And I'd rather keep what's mine. We're built to heal. It's slow, but we get there. The medic nodded slowly. Your resilience is not brute force. It is persistence. Cale smiled faintly. Now you're getting it. A week later, he was walking with crutches. The Tharnians watched in silent awe. Every step was slow, careful, but Cale refused assistance. Pain is part of healing, he told them. You just gotta respect your limits. Dralin remained close, quieter now, more thoughtful. I once believed your kind fragile. Reckless, he said as they sat outside the infirmary beneath the pale Tharnian sky. You weren't wrong, Cale said. We do dumb things sometimes. But we learn. We adapt. You realigned your own bone, Dralin said. With no anesthetic. Yeah, not my best idea, but it worked. Dralin looked at him. I have seen soldiers fall from heights and never rise. I have seen warriors with minor wounds give up. But you refuse to surrender to your own body. Cale shrugged. Sometimes, that's all you can do. He leaned back, letting the sunlight hit his face. The jungle buzzed faintly beyond the compound. His leg throbbed, but it was tolerable. He was healing, and the Tharnians were watching, learning. The fracture in his leg had become a bridge between worlds. Cale winced as the brace clicked tighter around his lower leg. The Tharnian medic, Vec, adjusted the clasps with long fingers that trembled slightly, though whether from nerves or the cold of the morning air, Cale couldn't tell. Too tight? Vec asked, his second eyelids flickering in concern. It's fine. Better snug than wobbly, Cale said, leaning back against the bench outside the infirmary. Just make sure the ankle's locked in place. If it shifts when I put weight on it, we're back to square one. Vec nodded, though his expression suggested he had no idea what square one meant. Your tolerance for discomfort is still being studied. You say that like you're expecting me to keel over. We were. Cale grunted and pulled the crutches toward him. Well, I hate to disappoint. It had been 11 days since the fracture. The swelling had gone down, and the bruising had turned a sickly green-yellow. Cale had asked for daily mobility drills, nothing aggressive, just enough to stop his muscles from going completely soft. Dralin approached from the clearing, carrying a thin, silvery board with a projection screen embedded in it. I've compiled a comparison chart, he said, setting it beside Cale. We cross-referenced your recovery with Tharnian baseline biology, species in both aquatic and terrestrial categories. There are no equivalents. Cale adjusted the crutch height. You couldn't find a single species that recovers from a fracture? Not without intervention involving cellular replacement. Bone regeneration is not a natural process here. Once compromised, Our structural tissue does not self-correct. That explains the panic, Cale said. You thought I was just waiting to fall apart. We assumed decay would set in by now, Drolin said. We had a disposal protocol prepared. Cale raised an eyebrow. You had a body disposal plan for me? It's standard procedure. Well, cancel it. I'm planning on walking out of here. Drolin didn't respond immediately. His elongated head tilted slightly, as if trying to study Cale from a new angle. May I ask a question unrelated to your leg? Shoot. You said you've had worse injuries. Can you elaborate on one? Cale stretched his arm, tapping a faint scar just above the elbow. Compound fracture in my arm during a training drop. Parachute failed to deploy properly, landed wrong. Bone came out through the skin. Took them 3 hours to reach me. Drolin blinked slowly. You remained conscious? Mostly. I passed out once. Came to when the medevac team started cutting my sleeve open. They gave me a nerve block and realigned it on site. No replacement limb? Nope. Screws, plates, months of rehab. But I still have full function. The projection screen flickered as Drolin tapped something on the board. An image of a Tharnian skeletal structure appeared, a delicate web of thin rods and filaments. Our limbs would disintegrate under that stress. You're not built for impact, Cale agreed. But you're better at lightweight movement and environmental adaptation. I've seen Tharnians scale vertical rock faces without gear. The trade-off is fragility. Every species has trade-offs. Vec returned with a small tray, setting it on the bench beside Cale. Inside were 2 dark green capsules and a cup of clear liquid. Pain relief? Cale asked. Anti-inflammatory and neural dampener, Vec said. Non-sedative, as requested. Cale downed them both and set the cup aside. Appreciate you not loading me up with anything that knocks me out. We reviewed your metabolic tolerances. Our compounds are adjusted to minimize cognitive interference. Smart. Last thing I need is to wake up drooling on myself. Vec glanced at Drolin. He continues to make jokes at inappropriate moments. It's almost constant, Drolin replied. That's not a bug, Cale said, standing slowly with the crutches. It's a feature. Drolin walked beside him as they made their way through the compound's shaded path. The jungle loomed just beyond the perimeter, a dense wall of motionless green. We've begun documenting your recovery as a separate medical case study. Glad I could contribute to science. Your manner of injury and timeline of healing have already challenged 3 long-standing assumptions about skeletal trauma. You build theories in a vacuum. You get surprised when air rushes in. Drolin paused. That metaphor is confusing. I'll explain it later. They stopped near the observation platform. 2 Tharnian researchers were already there, peering through environmental monitors. One of them turned as Cale approached. You are the human with the compromised limb, she said. Cale gave a nod. That's me. She tilted her head. You are upright, working on verticality 1 wobble at a time. You are walking on a limb that failed catastrophically 11 planetary rotations ago. Wasn't catastrophic, just inconvenient. The researcher turned back to her colleague, and they began whispering rapidly in their native dialect. Drolin cleared his throat. They are amazed, he said, and concerned. About what? That you are capable of operating while still structurally impaired. It raises questions about your pain thresholds and survival instincts. Cale leaned on the crutches. Pain's a message, not a command. You learn to listen without obeying. Drolin considered that in silence. Later that day, Cale was summoned to the central hall. It was an open, circular space, with translucent panels forming the roof and letting in the filtered light of the Tharnian sun. A half-dozen Tharnian medics stood in a semicircle, with Vec and Drolin near the center. A tall figure stepped forward. Elder status, judging by the deep indigo hue of her skin. She held a narrow staff tipped with a bioluminescent crystal. You are the human-designated Rivers, she said. I am. We have examined your case. Your recovery is not an anomaly. It is apparently standard for your species. That's accurate. You have disrupted our medical doctrine. One of our surgical instructors resigned this morning. Because I didn't die? Because our assumptions have been invalidated. Cale shifted his weight. Look, I didn't come here to one-up your science. I tripped on a vine and handled it the only way I knew how. You realigned a fractured limb without equipment. You say that like I carved it off and grew a new one. The elder regarded him for a long moment. We invite you to speak to our training cohort. About what? Pain, recovery, and the human refusal to yield. I can do that. Drolin stepped forward. There is a cultural hesitation to discuss pain directly. It is often hidden or dismissed. Yeah, Cale said. We do that too, just differently. The elder turned. Prepare the amphitheater. We will begin the dialogue at next light. As the group dispersed, Dralin remained beside him. You are changing more than our understanding of anatomy. Cale adjusted his crutches. That's not always a good thing. Perhaps not. But it is necessary. They stood in silence for a moment, the humid air thick with distant insect calls. A breeze stirred the leaves overhead, and for the first time since the fall, Cale realized he hadn't thought about the pain in hours. Hey, Dralin, he said. Yes. Let's make one thing clear for the record. Go on. I still hate vines. I will note that in the summary, the amphitheater was nothing like Cale expected. Instead of the usual tiered seating and echoing acoustics of Earth lecture halls, this one was carved into a natural basin of stone and fungus-grown resin, with seating that seemed to shift and adapt to its occupants. Pale blue light filtered down from the canopy above, and the air carried the faint scent of herbaceous oils. Cale stood on a raised platform, leaning lightly on a single crutch. His leg brace had been slimmed down by Tharnian engineers overnight, now wrapped in a flexible lattice that pulsed faintly with reactive light. Before him sat over 50 Tharnian medical trainees, arrayed in semicircular focus, their skin tones varying from soft greens to deep violet. Most had data pads or projection slates in their laps, though a few simply stared, unblinking. Dralin stood to the side, arms folded behind his back. He gave Cale a brief nod. You may begin. Cale exhaled through his nose and stepped forward a half-pace. The movement wasn't effortless, but he managed not to wince. All right, he said. Apparently, I'm here because I didn't die when I smashed my leg. So let's talk about what that actually means. No one spoke. A few slates flickered to life, recording. A fracture isn't catastrophic. It's a disruption in continuity. Bones are living tissue, and they adapt to stress. When that stress exceeds a threshold, they fail. But failure doesn't mean the end, it means a process begins. Swelling, inflammation, then bridging tissue starts forming. If you immobilize the area and keep it stable, new bone fills the gap. It's not magic. It's biology. A tall trainee with silver markings on their forearms raised a hand. What if the inner structure is misaligned? Then it heals wrong, Cale said. That's why we realign it either manually or surgically. The sooner, the better. Delay can lead to deformity or loss of function. You perform this correction yourself, the trainee said. Without sedation. Not ideal, Cale admitted. But in the field, you do what you have to. Priority one is getting the bone ends in line. If you wait too long, the tissue stiffens and alignment gets harder. Pain's just part of the process. Another voice from the back. How do you know when to stop applying force? Cale tapped the side of his leg brace. Experience. Feel. And sometimes, audible cues. You listen for the reduction. When the joint or fracture clicks back into place, there's a shift in tension. You feel it. A ripple passed through the audience, subtle but unmistakable. Tharnians didn't hide discomfort well. Pain is not considered usable data in our protocols, one said cautiously. It is something to be eliminated. I get that, Cale said. But pain isn't just a warning. It's feedback. You don't ignore it, but you don't let it dictate every move either. There's a balance. That's something we train for. Dralin stepped forward slightly. You mentioned training. What does it involve in terms of injury tolerance? Cale adjusted his stance. Depends on the field. Military, obviously, gets more exposure to stress scenarios. Controlled breaks, pressure testing, even hypoxia. Not to cause injury, but to teach response. You learn how to stay calm. Make decisions while compromised. That's survival. The trainee in the front leaned forward. But isn't that dangerous? Yeah, Cale said. But so is being unprepared. For a moment, no one asked anything. Then a younger-looking Tharnian near the platform edge raised both hands. Why not replace the limb entirely? Wouldn't that be faster, cleaner? Cale tilted his head. Because sometimes recovery isn't just about the body. It's about proving to yourself that you're not finished. We don't just value efficiency. We value endurance. Identity. You cut something off, even with a perfect replacement, and you lose something. Maybe not mobility, but something. Dralin's gaze lingered on him a moment longer than usual. Then he turned to the crowd. You may now examine the brace. They approached cautiously. Cale held still as various hands hovered, scanned, and gently probed the structure. One trainee tapped the reactive lattice and watched it flex with biofeedback. "This material is not native to your species," she said. "No," Cale replied. "But it was built by your engineers using your tech. I just gave specs. You adapted it." "That's what impressed me." Another trainee touched a small node near the ankle. "This monitors pressure variance?" "Yeah. Keeps me from overloading the bone while it's still healing. If I put too much weight on it, the brace stiffens." A third examined the interior lining. "It absorbs sweat." "That is disturbingly practical." Cale chuckled. "Yeah, well, we sweat a lot. It's one of our superpowers." Dralin gave a short cough, which Cale had learned was the Tharnian equivalent of mild amusement. By late afternoon, the amphitheater had emptied, save for Cale and Dralin. The sun had shifted, casting long shadows across the compound's upper structures. "You've altered several core assumptions today," Dralin said. "I didn't come here to change your culture." "No," Dralin said. "You simply survived. That was enough." Cale eased himself onto one of the strange shifting benches. It adjusted under him with a soft hum. "You know," he said, "on Earth, we used to think the body's limits were absolute. But we kept finding people who pushed them. Ran farther, healed faster, survived longer. Limits are useful. Until they're not." Dralin sat beside him. "Your species is more flexible than we assumed. Not just physically, conceptually." Cale nodded. "We're stubborn, sometimes to a fault, but it keeps us moving." There was a quiet stretch of time then, filled only by the distant calls of the jungle. The kind of silence that didn't press down, but made room. Finally, Dralin stood. "We will revise our medical frameworks," he said. "Include the possibility of recovery through persistence, not just replacement. It may take time. So does healing," Cale said. Dralin offered a hand. It was the first time Cale had seen a Tharnian initiate contact. He took it. By the next morning, Cale was walking without crutches. Slow, deliberate, one step at a time. A couple of the medics watched from a distance, unsure if they were witnessing progress or recklessness. Cale didn't mind. His balance was off, and his muscles ached, but the bone held. He passed the infirmary doorway and paused. Vex stood inside, cataloging supplies. When he noticed Cale, he stepped out. "You are unsupported. Figured I'd try a few steps. Brace is doing its job." Vex tilted his head. "We have begun training simulations based on your case." "Good," Cale said. "That means you're adapting. You did not request additional pain relief." "I'm managing." Vex hesitated. "We expected suffering to be more visible." "It's not about hiding it," Cale said. "It's about not letting it lead." Vex absorbed that without responding. Then he turned and walked back inside. By twilight, Cale stood at the edge of the compound, watching the canopy shift colors as the bioluminescent flora responded to the fading light. He rotated his ankle slightly, testing. A twinge. Nothing sharp. He didn't need to do much more. He'd made his point. Behind him, the Tharnian medics were already rewriting protocols. Somewhere deeper in the jungle, new paths were being cleared, and training modules would soon include scenarios once thought unthinkable. Cale turned back toward the compound, walking slowly but steadily, every step a quiet rebuttal to the impossible. He was already whole enough.